Listen, I'm going to tell you something that will probably peace. You start typing your angry comment. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you saw a genuinely happy couple under the age of 35? Not on Instagram, not in some staged vacation photo, but in real life. A couple that looks genuinely peaceful, stable, and in love. Because here's what I keep seeing, and I know you see it too. Men are staying single for years. Not because they can't find a woman. Not because they're socially awkward. But because they're starting to realize something. That the entire dating and relationship game has changed, and staying single is becoming the safest choice for most men. Not the desired choice, the rational one. After that opening, the narrator steps back and describes the pattern in third person, because it is easier to see a system when it is not filtered through one person's pride, anger, or hope. In a crowded cafe in Lisbon, a man named Daniel watches two friends argue over something small. Whose turn it was to pay, who forgot to text back, who always does the emotional work. Nothing dramatic happens. No plates fly. Nobody storms out. Yet there is a quiet exhaustion in the way both of them speak, as if they are negotiating a contract they never wanted to sign. Daniel is 33, steady job, no criminal record, no hidden family, no complicated mess. He is not a model, but he takes care of himself. He can get dates. He just does not stay in the game for long. Daniel is not unique. Across big cities and small towns, across different cultures and languages, there is a growing group of men who do not hate women, do not fear women, and are not incapable of love. They simply look at modern dating like an investor looks at a market that has become volatile, expensive, and emotionally punishing. So they hold cash. They wait. They work. They tell themselves they will re-enter later. Then later never comes. The narrator frames the question in plain terms. Why would someone opt out of something humans are wired to want? To answer that, the narrator describes a shift that many people feel but rarely name. In earlier generations, relationships were built inside a smaller world. Friends introduced friends. Families knew each other. Communities remembered reputations. Expectations were shaped by real couples in real neighborhoods, not by the highlight reels of strangers. A man's value was often judged by stability, character, and a willingness to provide. A woman's value was often judged by loyalty, nurturing, and social fit. Those old standards were not perfect or fair, but they did one thing well. They made the rules visible. In the last 15 years, that anchor has been cut. Now, the narrator explains, dating happens inside a marketplace built on endless options and constant comparison. A person is not just choosing a partner. That person is competing with the fantasy of a better partner. In that marketplace, attention becomes currency, and algorithms reward whatever provokes the strongest emotion. Envy, desire, outrage, humiliation, superiority. Relationships are no longer only private bonds. They are also social signals. The narrator does not claim one gender caused technology. But the narrator points out that men and women often experience this marketplace differently, and those differences create a loop that punishes commitment. On the women's side, especially in urban, online-first environments, women tend to receive more initial attention. Many platforms have more men than women. Many men swipe broadly. Many men send messages without thinking. So a woman can open an app and see a stream of interest that feels like proof of value. Not every woman experiences that. Not every woman wants it. But the structural reality is that many do, and it shapes expectations in subtle ways. When attention is abundant, standards rise. When standards rise, fewer men qualify. When fewer men qualify, the men who do qualify are treated like rare assets. On the men's side, the experience is often the opposite. Many men face long stretches of silence, rejection, or being treated as interchangeable. They are told to be confident, be vulnerable, be traditional, be modern, lead, listen, pay, split, don't pressure, don't be passive, don't be needy, don't be distant. The rules shift based on mood, context, and the person across the table. Men can adapt, but adaptation has a cost. Over time, some men begin to feel like they are auditioning for a role instead of building a partnership. The narrator then introduces the first big driver of long-term singleness: risk without clarity. In a stable market, risk can be worth it because reward is predictable. In modern dating, many men report the opposite. Risk is high, but the reward is uncertain. The risk is not only emotional. It is financial, reputational, and legal in certain countries. A man can invest years, money, and emotional labor, only to be told he was never enough, or that his partner has outgrown him, or that she wants to find herself. That can happen to women too, and the narrator acknowledges that. But the narrator focuses on the perception that many men carry, that if things collapse, the blame often lands on the man by default. The narrator describes how this perception is reinforced. In popular culture, a struggling woman is often framed as healing. A struggling man is often framed as failing. If a couple is unhappy, people ask what the man did wrong. If a man is hurt, people tell him to toughen up. If a man speaks about fear, people tell him he is insecure. Eventually, the man learns a lesson that is not fair, but feels true in his lived experience, that he can lose quietly, but he cannot grieve publicly. The narrator does not say that story is always wrong. Sometimes it is right. Sometimes a man is selfish, cruel, addicted, absent. But the point is about perception. When men believe that they will be blamed no matter what, they manage risk differently. They avoid contracts where the penalty is public shame. A second driver is what the narrator calls asymmetric expectations. In many modern conversations, women's standards are treated as sacred boundaries, while men's standards are treated as insecurity. If a woman says she wants a man taller, richer, more confident, more ambitious, more emotionally intelligent, that is framed as empowerment. If a man says he wants a woman kinder, less combative, more consistent, more supportive, that can be framed as controlling. Again, not always, not everywhere, but often enough that it shapes behavior. Daniel has felt it. He once dated a woman named Sophia. She was bright, funny, stylish, ambitious. On their third date, she listed what she wanted in a future partner. It was not insane. It was just precise. He should be emotionally mature, have a strong masculine presence, be financially stable, have a plan, be romantic, and also not clingy, be assertive, and also always make her feel safe, be open, and also never burden her with his problems. Daniel listened and nodded. He did not argue, because he could tell she had practiced these lines, like a checklist learned from the internet and polished by friends. Then, when Daniel gently asked what she expected from herself in a relationship, Sophia laughed and said, "I'm already the prize." She meant it playfully. But Daniel heard something underneath it, a belief that her existence was enough, while his existence required constant proof. The narrator uses that moment to explain a concept. When one side is taught to evaluate and the other side is taught to perform, resentment grows. In a healthy relationship, both people evaluate and both people perform. Both have standards. Both have responsibilities. Both are allowed to be imperfect. But in the modern dating market, a common pattern emerges. Some women, fueled by endless attention and cultural messages about never settle, approach dating like a consumer. Some men, desperate for any chance, approach dating like a seller. Consumers can walk away easily. Sellers must convince, discount, and overdeliver. Over time, sellers stop selling. The narrator then shifts to the impact of social media, because it quietly rewrites what people think they deserve. In the past, a woman might compare her partner to her father, her uncles, the husbands in her neighborhood, the couples she met at work. Those comparisons were limited and imperfect. Today, comparisons are global and curated. A woman can see a man in Dubai buying a car for his girlfriend. She can see a couple traveling every month. She can see a man cooking dinner and surprising his wife with flowers, filmed in perfect lighting, edited to soft music. She can see engagement rings the size of small planets and apartments that look like luxury hotels. Most of that content is marketing, performance, or staged intimacy. But the brain does not always care. Repetition makes the unusual feel normal. The narrator describes how this affects dating. When extraordinary becomes the baseline, ordinary feels like disrespect. A man who brings flowers feels normal. A man who does not feels negligent. A man who pays for dinner feels normal. A man who suggests splitting feels cheap. A man who texts good morning feels normal. A man who misses one day feels emotionally unavailable. Standards are not wrong. But standards detached from reality create chronic disappointment. The narrator uses another character to show the other side. A woman named Aisha, late 20s, kind, hardworking, genuinely wanting a family. She is not cruel. She is not shallow. Yet she cannot help feeling underwhelmed by the men she meets, because her feed has trained her to expect a man who is both a provider and a therapist, both a leader and a best friend, both a lover and a personal growth coach, always available, always patient, always confident, never fragile, never tired. When Aisha meets a decent man who is stressed about work, she thinks, he is not emotionally safe. When she meets a man who is gentle but not ambitious, she thinks, he will slow me down. When she meets a man who is ambitious but not poetic, she thinks, he will neglect me. The narrator does not blame her for having desires. The narrator says the problem is that the marketplace has taught her that the perfect combination is common, and that if it is not in front of her, she simply has not swiped enough. That belief is rocket fuel for perpetual dating. The narrator then brings the focus back to why men stay single for years. Many men see that loop and decide, they cannot compete with a fantasy. They cannot outswipe an algorithm. They cannot outperform a highlight reel. And they do not want to build a life on the fear that one day their partner will wake up and think, I could do better. So they retreat to what they can control. The narrator lists what happens next, in a rhythm that feels like the unfolding of a quiet epidemic. First, the man improves. He goes to the gym. He works longer hours. He saves money. He upgrades his wardrobe. He learns how to talk. He reads about psychology, attachment, communication. He becomes the better man everyone says women want. Then he dates again. He meets women who say they want a good man, but who are bored when he is good. He meets women who demand vulnerability, then lose attraction when he shows it. He meets women who want masculine leadership, then resent him for being decisive. He meets women who want equality, then expect him to carry traditional burdens. Not all women, not most women, but enough for him to start seeing patterns. Then he stops dating, not with anger, with calculation. He tells himself, I will wait until I'm more established. He tells himself, I will date when I have more time. He tells himself, I will date when I find someone serious. Meanwhile, time passes. Habits harden. Peace becomes addictive. And the longer he stays single, the harder it feels to invite chaos into his home. The narrator explains that this is why singleness becomes self-reinforcing. A man who has built a stable solo life experiences relationships not as a necessary foundation, but as a disruption. He asks, what does she add? If the answer is stress, drama, cost, criticism, he opts out. At this point, the narrator introduces the most controversial claim, but does so with care. Certain cultural messages aimed at women can unintentionally make men avoid commitment. The narrator points to a popular slogan, if he wanted to, he would. It sounds empowering, but it can become toxic when applied without nuance. Sometimes a man does not do something because he does not want to. But sometimes he does not because he is overwhelmed, uncertain, or afraid of being used. When a woman interprets every imperfect action as a lack of love, she escalates. She tests. She demands proof. The man, sensing that love is a constant exam, withdraws. Both feel unsafe. Both blame the other. The narrator also points to the idea of never settle. Again, it is not wrong. People should not accept abuse or constant misery. But never settle can turn into never build. Relationships require compromise, patience, and shared growth. If a woman expects a man who is already fully formed, she may reject the very process that creates deep love. And when men see that deep love is not valued, they stop offering it. The narrator shifts to the economics of dating, because modern romance is not free. It costs time, money, and energy. In many cultures, men still pay more, plan more, initiate more, and absorb more rejection. Men are also told they must be ambitious and successful to be worthy. Yet the same culture often mocks them for thinking money matters. Daniel has felt this too. He once matched with a woman who suggested a restaurant. The bill was not outrageous, but it was enough to notice. When he proposed splitting, she frowned and said, "That's not masculine." Daniel did not argue. He paid. But he also made a mental note. She wanted tradition when it benefited her, and modernity when it benefited her. He did not hate her for that. He simply saw it as a poor deal. The narrator then explains a painful truth. Modern dating often asks men to prove value before receiving respect, while asking women to receive respect before proving reciprocity. When reciprocity is missing, men disconnect. Next, the narrator discusses the reputation game. In earlier eras, a breakup might be private. Today, it can become a public trial. Screenshots, social posts, group chats, story times, and the endless appetite for drama mean that a man can lose not only a partner but also dignity. Even if he did nothing abusive, he might still be portrayed as incompetent, selfish, or emotionally immature. Some women do this. Some men do it too. But because cultural narratives often position women as victims and men as suspects, many men fear being turned into a cautionary tale. So, the narrator says, many men choose the safest path: no relationship, no scandal. At this point in the script, the narrator changes scenery to make the point global. In Seoul, a software engineer lives alone and sends money to his parents. He sees marriage as expensive and socially risky. In Toronto, a tradesman watches friends lose half their savings in divorce and decides to avoid that outcome. In Sao Paulo, a man who grew up seeing unstable relationships decides that peace is better than passion. In Nairobi, a young professional fears being treated as an ATM. In Paris, a man is tired of being judged for not fitting a fashionable script. Different cultures, different accents, same quiet conclusion. The cost of making the wrong choice is high, and the process of making a right choice feels more like an exam than a romance. The narrator then introduces a concept called the trust tax. In a healthy world, trust is assumed until broken. In modern dating, trust must be earned before it is given. People enter relationships already defensive. Women say, men cheat. Men say, women leave when they are bored. Women say, men lie. Men say, women test and punish. These are stereotypes, not universal truths. But when people treat stereotypes like facts, they create the very behavior they fear. Defensive people provoke defensive responses. Suspicion invites secrecy. Testing invites withdrawal. The narrator emphasizes that women are not villains in this story. Many are reacting to real dangers. Many have been hurt. Many are trying to protect themselves. The problem, the narrator says, is that protection can become a weapon, and when it does, it drives away the very men who would have been safe. Here is where the narrator circles back to the original claim without turning it into hate. Some women's behaviors and expectations contribute significantly to why many decent men choose long-term singleness. Not because women are evil, but because certain behaviors create a relationship climate where men feel constantly evaluated and rarely appreciated. The narrator gives examples of those behaviors, phrased as patterns rather than insults. 1. Constant comparison. A man's effort is measured against other men online, not against what he actually did. 2. Moving goalposts. When he meets one standard, another appears. 3. Contempt disguised as humor, mocking his income, height, ambition, or masculinity under the cover of just joking. 4. Expecting traditional masculinity while rejecting traditional femininity. 5. Treating a relationship as a stage where the woman's feelings are the main story and the man's feelings are background noise. Then the narrator adds the mirror image, to keep it grounded. Men also push women away by being passive, addicted to validation, emotionally shut down, unreliable, or disrespectful. But the narrator's focus remains on the question, why would a man who could date choose not to? Because, the narrator says, the worst part is not rejection. The worst part is being accepted and then treated like a placeholder. Many men have experienced the almost relationship. Everything is going well until the woman suddenly grows cold. When asked why, she says she is confused. Then, weeks later, she is with someone else. Men can do this too. But in the male experience of modern dating, it is common enough to create a constant background fear. She is never fully in. She is always scanning. She is always keeping options open. A man who feels like an option does not build a home. He builds an exit plan. The narrator then explores why women might behave this way, because understanding mechanisms helps more than moralizing. Some women are raised in an environment where validation is currency. They learn early that attention equals worth. They are not taught to admire men for quiet stability. They are taught to chase excitement. They are told to date up, secure the bag, never chase, be the prize. These messages can be empowering in limited contexts, but destructive when used as a life philosophy. They can turn partnership into conquest. The narrator uses a vivid metaphor. If love becomes a ladder, then the partner becomes a rung. And nobody wants to be stepped on. Now the narrator arrives at the part that many men quietly think but rarely say. For a certain group of men, staying single is not lonely. It is peaceful. Daniel comes home after work. His apartment is clean. His finances are simple. His weekends are his. He can travel without negotiation. He can focus on fitness, learning, and friends. He can sleep without conflict. He does not wake up to criticism. He does not manage someone else's emotions. He does not walk on eggshells. He feels human. The narrator is honest. This piece can become a trap too. Humans need connection. But when connection feels like a gamble, peace feels like a rational refuge. The narrator then explains why this matters for women as well. When many men opt out, the dating pool changes. The men who remain active are often the men who enjoy the game. The charismatic, the non-committal, the thrill-seekers, the men with options who treat people as experiences. Meanwhile, the stable men are at home, building businesses, playing sports, reading books, investing, sleeping early. So women who want commitment meet fewer men who want the same. They then conclude that men are trash, which further increases distrust and defensiveness. The loop tightens. To make the point concrete, the narrator describes a couple who almost made it. Elena meets Marcus at a friend's birthday. Marcus is calm, funny, and serious about building a future. Elena likes him, but she has been taught to keep standards high, so she watches him like a judge watches a contestant. When Marcus arrives 5 minutes late because of traffic, Elena calls it a red flag. When he hesitates about an expensive weekend trip, Elena interprets it as stinginess. When he tries to talk about his stress at work, Elena labels it emotional dumping. None of these reactions are meant to be cruel. They are meant to be safe. Marcus feels that shift. He notices that his good moments are taken as basic, while his imperfect moments are treated as evidence. He starts choosing safer words, then shorter texts, then fewer dates. Elena senses the distance and tests harder, asking questions with hidden traps. Would you still love me if I gained weight? Why don't you post me? Who is that girl liking your photo? Marcus answers carefully, but the interrogation never ends, so his affection turns into management. After 2 months, he ends it. Elena tells friends he was emotionally unavailable. Marcus tells friends she was impossible to satisfy. The narrator notes that both stories can be true in the teller's mind, and that is exactly why so many potential relationships die before they mature. At this point, the narrator inserts a transition line. The goal is not to shame anyone, but to describe incentives. Incentives shape behavior more than ideals. Then the narrator offers a practical breakdown of what changes the incentive structure. First, clarity. Men are more willing to take risk when the rules are clear. That means consistent boundaries, honest communication, and shared expectations early. Not a vague, let's see, for months while options remain open. Second, reciprocity. Appreciation is not a compliment. It is a signal that effort is seen. Men do not need worship. They need acknowledgement. If a woman wants a man to lead, she must also support. If she wants him to provide, she must also respect. If she wants vulnerability, she must also hold it with care, not weaponize it later. Third, reality-based standards. Standards are good. Fantasy standards are poison. A woman can want a tall man, a wealthy man, a confident man. But she should understand trade-offs. A man who is building wealth may have less time. A man who is highly desired may have more temptation. A man who is emotionally fluent may have done painful work. If she wants the finished product, she must be willing to be a partner, not a critic. Fourth, accountability for both sides. The narrator emphasizes that women gain power in modern dating, but power without responsibility breeds chaos. If a woman rejects many decent men for minor imperfections, she should not be surprised when fewer decent men offer themselves. If a man treats women like disposable entertainment, he should not be surprised when women become defensive. Then the narrator returns to Daniel as a way to make the conclusion personal without switching to first person. Daniel is not anti-woman. He is pro-peace. He still wants love in theory. But he has learned to value alignment over intensity. He has learned that being chosen is not enough. Being respected matters more. He has learned that chemistry without kindness is expensive. He also has a quiet list now. Not a list of a woman's measurements or income. A list of character traits. Consistency, humility, emotional self-control, willingness to build, ability to apologize, appreciation for effort, a life that is not fueled by drama. When he meets a woman who has those traits, he is open. When he does not, he stays alone. The narrator ends by addressing the broader cultural lie that keeps people stuck, the lie that love is supposed to feel effortless all the time. Real love is not a constant high. It is a steady alliance. It is two imperfect people choosing the same direction on days they feel strong and on days they feel tired. It is attraction plus admiration plus respect. And respect is not produced by demands. It is produced by behavior. So the narrator's final message is simple. Men stay single for years not because they cannot find women, but because they are no longer willing to pay the modern price of modern dating. And if women want more good men to step back into commitment, the answer is not louder slogans or harsher tests. The answer is an environment where decent men believe that effort will be met with reciprocity, and where partnership is treated as building a life, not collecting experiences. Because when love feels like a fair deal, people stop holding cash. They invest.